With this morning's devotion, we return to the book of Psalms. We're going to begin this week, in Psalm number 42 as we enter into the second book in the book of Psalms. Now remember, they're not divided into themes or categories. The books are divided to follow the outline, if you will, of the Torah, the Pentateuch, the law of Moses. Part of that is to reflect this idea that the law determines, controls, directs our covenant relationship with God. The more you know God, the more you obey Him, the more you love Him. When you break the law, when you disobey God, the relationship is damaged, if not broken. This morning, we begin with Psalm number 42. It and actually Psalm number 43 go together. They are seemingly two parts of the same song. In fact, some of the older copies of the book of Psalms merge the two together into one song rather than two. But they're songs of lament. The author is describing a situation in which he seems to be separated from God, that he's away from Jerusalem, that he's away from the relationship with his covenant father, and he's lamenting, he's bemoaning, he's bewailing his situation, longing for the days when the relationship will be restored to what it was once before. In many ways, the psalm reads like 2020. Things are not as they should be, things don't feel right, and they won't be until the relationship with God is made whole once again. Something that will not ever happen completely this side of heaven, but something that all of God's people should long for as they long for the day when the relationship is cemented, when it becomes real, when it becomes permanent, what has been hinted at throughout their entire life experience. And so let's go ahead and begin to read with Psalm number 42, verse 1. As a deer pants for flowing streams, so my soul pants for you, O God. My soul thirsts for God, for the living God. When shall I come and appear before God? My tears have been my food day and night, while they say to me all the day long, where is your God? These things I remember as I pour out my soul, how I would go with this throng and lead them in procession to the house of God, with glad shouts and songs of praise, a multitude keeping festival. Why are you cast down, O my soul? And why are you in turmoil within me? Hope in God, for I shall again praise Him, my salvation, and my God. My soul is cast down within me, therefore I remember you from the land of Jordan and of Hermon, from Mount Mizar. Deep calls to deep at the roar of your waterfalls. All your breakers and your waves have gone over me. By day the Lord commands His steadfast love, and at night His song is with me, a prayer to the God of my life. I say to God, my rock, why have you forgotten me? Why do I go mourning because of the oppression of the enemy? As with a deadly wound in my bones, my adversaries taunt me, while they say to me all the day long, where is your God? Why are you cast down, O my soul, and why are you in turmoil within me? Hope in God, for I shall again praise Him, my salvation and my God. And so here we are, we're working our way through Psalm 42. As we look at the superscription, the title, if you will, it merely says that it is to the choir master, so it's meant to be sung publicly as a corporate congregation. It's a maskil of the sons of Korah. We don't know exactly who the sons of Korah actually represent. We know they were the song leaders in the temple era. There's an irony, if it is in true connection that we are to make, and that the only Korah mentioned in the Bible other than in the book of Psalms was the man who rose up in rebellion in the wilderness and challenged Aaron as to whether or not he was the real priest of God or if somebody else could fill that role. And now, perhaps generations later, here are his great descendants far down the road leading the people in worship. Some of you might have recognized verse 1 from a more contemporary praise song, as a deer pants for flowing streams, as my deer is like a deer who pants for the waters, so pants my soul for you, O God. When's the last time in your relationship with God you so longed for Him that you were panting for Him like an animal dying of thirst in the wilderness? When was the last time you longed for Him like so many times we've all longed for a cold drink of water, or perhaps for some of us from the South, a sweet tea? Here's an indication of, do you really long for God? Do you desire Him? What's the indication? What's the depth of your affections for Him? Do you long for Him like the psalmist here says he does? Verse 2, my soul in fact thirsts for God, he continues, for the living God, the real God, the true God. When shall I come and appear before God? He's away from Jerusalem, the picture seems to be. He's separated from the temple. And remember, back in the Old Testament, the temple represents the relationship with God. It's where they go to worship, where they go to pray, where they go to make their sacrifices, where they go to help maintain that covenant connection with God. And now he's away. And so he's wondering, how much longer will it be like this until I can worship God face to face? In fact, he says, because of this separation, my tears have been my food day and night. While they all say to me, while his tormentors, his enemies, where is your God? They mock him for his faith that he's trying to maintain in this time of separation. But he says, here's what keeps him going. Verse 4, these things I remember as I pour out my soul. What does he remember? How I used to go with a throng, with a group, with a congregation, and lead them in procession to the house of God, going up to the temple with glad shouts and songs of praise, a multitude keeping festival. This is an indication, an echo, if you will, a hint of what's going to come later in the book of Psalms. When we get into the Psalms in the 120s and early 130s, what are called songs of ascent. Songs meant to be sung by God's people on the way to the temple. They're to prepare their hearts for worship before they get to church. They don't walk in at 10:55 and they wait for the music to start and that's when they get their worship on. No, they begin on the way and prepare their hearts. That memory is what keeps the psalmist going. That even though he's separated from God, he knows that one day he will worship him again. But until that time, it's the memories of the good times, memories of when he did worship God in the past that sustain him. In fact, he asks, why are you cast down, O my soul, in verse 5? Why are you in turmoil within me? Why are you so downhearted, he says. Hope in God. If you need a word this year in 2020 to keep us going, it's hope in God. For I shall again praise him, my salvation and my God. Hope in God because one day things will be restored. Hope in God because he's made his promises and he will in fact keep them one day. In the meantime, he says, my soul is cast down within me. Therefore I remember you in verse 6, from the land of the Jordan and Mount Hermon, from Mount Mizar. We don't know where Mount Mizar is, but Hermon is the mountain where the Jordan River begins. As the water melts, the snows and the springs and the top of the mountain, then they come down. So it's the origins of the Jordan River. And then playing off that water theme in verse 7, he says, deep calls to deep, deep waters, at the roar of your waterfalls. Now, this is not meant to go, oh, wow, what a beautiful scene of the mountains in North Carolina or Tennessee. In fact, water is often an image in the Old Testament of turmoil, of destruction, of things being out of control. Think of the story of Jonah and the water passing over his head. Deep calls to deep at the roar of your waterfalls. And here's that image. All your breakers and your waves have gone over me. Everything seems to be falling apart. Everything seems to be out of control. I'm about to drown. I'm going down, as the old cartoon characters would show, for the third time. That's Jonah. In many ways, that's us in 2020 as we keep wondering what else could possibly go on. But God's still in control, verse 8 says. By day, the Lord commands his steadfast love. God requires this love to continue in the covenant relationship. And at night, his song is with me. God's words are encouraging him, a prayer to the God of my life. And so he's obeying God, he's singing God's praises, and he's still praying to God in spite of the apparent lack of control and struggles and troubles. I say to God in this prayer, my rock, why have you forgotten me? Where are you? Why do I go mourning because of the oppression of my enemy? As with a deadly wound in my bones, my adversaries, they taunt me, they mock me, they keep on going, while they say to me all the day long, where is your God? That's twice now that he's repeated that phrase. It'll be repeated again in Psalm 43 on Thursday when we look at it. Why are you cast down, O my soul, he answers. And why are you in turmoil within me? And again, here's that echo, that song, that verse, if you will, that chorus of the song repeated again. Hope in God, not your circumstances. Hope in God, for I shall again praise him, my salvation and my God. Hope in God. This morning, let's not focus on what's wrong in the world, the political season, the riots, the race struggles in our nation. Let's not dwell on COVID any more this morning than we have to. All those things are important and they need to be dealt with, and we need to pray for them and do our best to make a positive contribution to correcting those sort of situations. But this morning, So many of us are letting those kind of things or other circumstances, money, health, family problems, weigh us down and turn our attention away from God. Rather than longing for Him, panting for Him, very often in these circumstances we forget Him. And so the psalmist reminds us twice already in Psalm 42, and again in a couple of days in Psalm 43, hope in God, not in the government. A lot of people are going to be disappointed come November, one side or the other. Somebody's going to be disappointed. And Christians on both sides will be wondering, where is God in all this? The psalmist says, you hope in God. Why? Because I will again praise Him. God will restore us. God will make all things right, just as He promised in Genesis chapter 3, verse 15 to Adam and Eve. Because after all, as the psalmist ends this morning, He is my salvation. He is my God. He is our hope. Do you hope in Him? Do you long for Him? Can you not wait for the day when you'll finally be able to be with Him for all of eternity?